Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the G-Forces podcast. So, we are actually pre-filming this episode, and we have another episode that we are going to be pre-filming today. We've got a busy couple of weeks coming up, so...
you have a busy
weeks. Yeah. We've got, like, a concert coming up in the next week.
Friends and family coming into town.
I will be going on vacation for a week out of the country.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot going on, so we figured we'd pre-film this episode. So there might be some things that have happened in the F1 and just motorsport world in general that normally we would address in an episode like this, but they haven't happened yet.
We can't predict the future.
Yeah.
I like to think we can, but we can't.
Yeah. So today is... What day is today? Sunday the 14th? 15th of October. And we were filming that today. Yesterday, we were at the Red Bull Show Run in Nashville, which was so cool to experience.
Yeah, I mean, as we've said before and known to all of our listeners, we are very new to the sport, and we live in Tennessee, and have never been to honestly, anything motorsport. Like, that's not... Like, our dad, we didn't grow up watching NASCAR or any level of motorsport. And so to sit there and to see, an F1 car that close, to kind of see, like, size-wise, too.
Yeah.
But then also to just, like, hear the car, experience it firsthand. Yeah, it was just a show run and wasn't an actual, like, Grand Prix race, but it was really cool. Like, for someone new to the sport to experience in our city, you know, it was really cool to experience, and I'm happy that I was dragging my feet, because I am very much a homebody, and it was Broadway, which, if anyone's been to Nashville, it's literally just drunk people fest.
Yeah. And so if you live in Nashville, it's like the place you never want to go to.
It's Times Square.
Yeah.
So it was exciting to see. I'm happy you dragged me out, as you always do.
At first, Mary Catherine wanted to go to, like, one of the second floors of one of the honky-tonks, which would have been a cool idea.
If we had gone there at the ass cracking on.
Yes, because then we could see, like, the overview shot of the road.
I was thinking about filming for you guys.
A bunch of the honky-tonks, like, their front row views were reserved or just taken up immediately. I'm guessing people got there right at 10 a.m. when the honky-tonks opened.
Yeah, we tried to go to one, and they were like, "Are you here for the private event?" And we were like...
I was so tempted to be like, yeah, sure.
And I'm like, no one knows us. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see Danny Rick in person. I mean, obviously, like, from a very large gap of distance.
Well, funny story, actually. We are walking to Broadway, and we get there, and I'm checking Red Bull Racing's Instagram, and I'm like, oh, I think he's probably down at the other end of the road.
Down by the river.
Yeah, and MC goes, or that's right him in front of us, and I was like,
and she goes,
no.
Oh, haha, very funny, MC.
Because I'm not looking up, I'm looking at my phone, and then she's like, no, I'm not joking.
I'm like, he's literally right there.
And I look up, and I'm like, oh my god! It's actually him.
Immediately FaceTimes one of her best friends.
Yeah, because she's a huge Danny Rick fan. Very cool, very normal.
Cool. I will say, spectators, it was very male-dominated.
Yeah. We did get a front row spot against the barrier where he did some donuts, which was really cool. I think we got there at the perfect time, so we had to stand there for a while before it actually started, but it was totally worth it. And it being the RB7 too, like, it was so cool to hear.
I think just not even, I mean, there's only so much you can get when you're watching it through the TV screen, but not realizing, and this is, yeah, I'm new to motorsport, so if anyone's gonna roll their eyes, go for it. But, like, not realizing how loud the car was.
Yeah, we made the mistake of not bringing earplugs.
We're getting old.
You could have brought you could buy earplugs at
official
the
Red Bull
ones, like the Red Bull merch stand, which of course this is where I bought my hat. Even though I'm not a huge Red Bull fan, I had to buy the hat.
Okay, the hat looks
it's a great hat.
We did all buy Red Bull hats. We got it. We're growing the collection.
Exactly. We're gonna buy a hat from every single team, and we'll wear that hat depending on who we liked watching that weekend. But what was I saying? I forgot where I was going with this story.
I mean, theoretically, we could rewind and listen.
No, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to, no. But anyways, it was a great experience, seeing it all and seeing the differences between the current car, I don't think they had the RB19, the one that was Max's. I think it was last year's car. I think they had the RB18, the one that was, like, sectioned off with, like...
that we, like, went up.
Yeah, that you could take a picture of. I think that was the RB18, and then seeing the difference between that and the RB7 was really cool. I know what you're talking about. Earplugs, not being able to hear.
Earplugs, yes. Call that.
So, I was able to, you could go buy them from Red Bull, but then I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm 24. I don't need earplugs. I needed earplugs. And now I have seriously looked into buying, like, legit event earplugs that I can just reuse over and over again.
The noise was, like, fine until...
The music.
Well, the music was really loud, but then, like, everything was just loud in volume, and then the RB7 did a donut 15 feet away from us, and my ears have never popped so many times. Still feel a little fuzzy, slightly concerning, not really gonna worry about it.
We got into
the car. It is what it is.
We got into our car afterwards, and I was like... Because I've never sat in the backseat of our... We got a brand new car.
Unknown to all of you, our car died.
Yeah, so...
We share a car.
Thank you, Red Bull, for convincing us to buy another Honda. And so I was sitting in the backseat of the car for the very first time, and Mary Catherine was playing music, and I was like... Chris, Mary Catherine's husband, I was like, does it normally sound muffled back here? And he was like, well, it's probably because of your ears. And I was like, but does it normally sound muffled back here? I've never sat back here. And he's like, I don't know. And so I'm pretty sure the music was, my ears could not hear properly.
Yeah, we all knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Anyways, should we get into the rest of the episode?
Yeah, so we have, with the Mexican Grand Prix coming up, we wanted to focus on, the Mexican drivers. So we are going to be speaking about Ricardo Rodríguez, who some of you might know, some of you might not know. Him and his brother Pedro, really important to Mexico's F1 history. So we'll get into him and his life in F1. And then what are you bringing to the table?
So for the part of the week, it's more of a section of the car. I'm going to be talking about side pods, just because, no particular reason, just because I wanted to talk about them. And then for our shop talk, we are going to be talking about one particular flag. So we're going to talk about the blue flag during races or during race weekends that you might see.
Know.
We are, for the next couple of episodes, we're likely going to be, our shop talk, unless something else pops up that we need to talk about, our shop talk is probably going to be a different flag every single episode, or maybe a few different flags. There's a lot of flags.
There are more than red, green, and black
checkered.
And white.
Yeah, and yellow. There's many different kinds of yellow flags, too. There's a whole bunch of them.
A whole world of flags.
Yeah.
Brought to you by us.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about the blue flag in our shop talk. But I think that's really it for our introduction. Want to get into everything?
Yeah, let's talk about Ricardo.
Awesome.
All right, so my sources for the driver of this week is Formula1.com. They have a really good article on the Rodríguez brothers. It goes into Ricardo, who's our driver this week, but also his brother, Pedro. I've spoken about them before, but F1ForgottenDrivers.com, really great resource, kind of just breaks down drivers that I feel like some of the history is harder to find. Not sure how they're maintained, but good resource I've used in the past for our past drivers. So Ricardo Rodríguez was born February 14th, 1942 in Mexico City, Mexico. He grew up with considerable wealth due to his father. His dad was there's a little tidbit I read about the actual circuit that is in Mexico and how essentially it was the Rodríguez's dad was friends with the Mexico president and was like, hey, let's do this, let's build this track.
So their dad is the reason?
Their dad apparently is, the, what you read through is apparently the reason why, he, whispered into the president's ear and was like, build the track.
Oh, that's cool.
But, yeah, their dad was really wealthy.
And now it's named after both of them.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he began racing bicycles early on, while his brother, 2 years his senior, began racing motorcycles at the age of 13. And then Ricardo would move on to motorcycles, following in his brother's footsteps, clinching several national titles. So they did really well in the motorcycles. These are children. They are young. Just throughout this entire length of information I'm about to give you, just realize, this person is very young. Ricardo moved on to motorcycles, and then he ended up quitting motorcycle racing in 1957 to focus on cars. 1957, he was 15. He quit motorcycle racing. At 15, I was an idiot. I didn't even have anything to quit.
Yeah. We didn't even have our learner's permit yet.
I could not drive a vehicle.
No,
and he had
legally.
already won races.
Yeah.
He made his first international debut that year at Riverside in California, which was a race course just outside of LA, and he won that race. Just a little quick background on Riverside. It held the 1960 U.S. Grand Prix, but the course was ultimately closed in 1989. Doesn't exist anymore. But debuted there for international success, did really well, and kind of grabbed the attention of a lot of people. In 1958, Ricardo and his brother went to Le Mans to enter, but he was denied because he was literally too young. He was 16 years old, and they were like, no, you can't. You're too young. For some reason, a bunch of the websites kept focusing on, he was 16 years and 108 days old, and I was like, why? That is really specific. But yeah, Le Mans was like, thanks for the interest, but you're a child. 2 years later, so, while this was happening, he got denied, frustrated, but he kept, on the racing circuit, so it's not like he didn't give up on his dreams. So 2 years later, in 1960, he was able to join Le Mans, racing with Luigi Cinetti's North American racing team. At 18, he became the youngest at the time to podium, placing second. So, huge deal, really young, seeing a lot of success. That success, along with other racing results in other worlds, really continued to get him noticed, and Ferrari invited Ricardo to drive. Enzo Ferrari, still alive at this point, saw him and fell in love. He made his Formula debut during the 1961 Italian Grand Prix. At the time, he was the youngest driver to sit in an F1 car, being 18. He qualified second, 1/10 of a second behind pole sitter Wolfgang von Trips, and 0.8 ahead of Phil Hill. He retired from that race after 13 laps due to fuel pump issues, but Ferrari was thrilled, saw his performance, and was super happy. 1961 Italian Grand Prix, we've talked about it before. Unfortunately, very deadly race. Yeah. And to be between, Phil Hill won the championship that year.
Yeah.
To be beating him by 0.8 of a second, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And he's a child.
Wasn't he I don't know if I saw this somewhere, or I might be thinking about someone else, the first Mexican F1 driver?
I believe so. His brother ended up driving an F1 later on.
But it was after him.
And there's only been 6 Mexican F1 drivers.
Okay, so I think he might have been the first.
2 brothers plus Checo, that's half of it.
Yeah.
So, I'm not exactly sure. There might be someone earlier, but I have,
F1 hadn't been around for that long at that point, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I was thinking suspicion. He was probably the first. Okay. So, he retired from that race. But because of his success in qualifying, and he was doing really well in those 13 laps, a lot of shit happened at the beginning of that race. Fuel pump issue, not his fault. So Ferrari signs him for a full driver's contract for the 1962 season. 1962, not great for Ferrari. Not a great year. His best showing was 4th in Belgium. And Ferrari, for some reason, like, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's someone out there that will know, but for some reason, like, Ferrari, just, like, their car was not doing well. And they decided to not race in Watkins Glen in New York in South Africa. And then 1962 was the debut of, like, the Mexican Grand Prix, but it was a non-championship. So it was just, like, a showing. It was the first year that they did it. And Ferrari was like, we're not going. Obviously, Ricardo that's his home race. That's his home race.
Yeah.
It's the debut of his...
That's a huge deal.
It's the first F1 race in Mexico, and his team is not going. So, he wanted to. He was extremely proud of his country, really proud of being Mexican, and he was determined to race in this GP. I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
He agreed to drive a Lotus for this race.
Interesting.
Oh, wait, no, sorry, I skipped. No, I didn't skip. I keep doing this where I skip over my notes and then panic. So, yeah, he agreed to drive a Lotus for this race because...
I didn't know that would be allowed.
I guess because it was a non-championship race.
True.
That's the thing, like, a bunch of these guys would do F1, and then while they were doing F1, they would do, like...
random other things.
They would do the endurance championships. Like, it was, like, they wanted to get into anything, but then there were also the non-champion, like, the U.S. races that they would come to, like the Indy.
Their contracts were very different back then, I'm assuming.
I think just the racing world was different.
Yeah.
You know? The timing, also, travel.
Yeah.
Travel was different. A lot of different things. Yeah. So... Ricardo was extremely proud driving the Lotus, and then during the first day of practice, he was eager to get laps in and track the fastest lap. He wanted to just be on top. It was his home race, so he was the first one out, ended up doing fastest lap. And then John Surtees made the next fastest lap. So Ricardo was like, I'm going to top this, I'm going to go back out, and he went out to top this. There was a famous corner at the Mexican track called the Peraltada. It's no longer there. They recirculated, I think in the night, they, like, redid some stuff. They, like, it was in disrepair. And so it's not there anymore, but, unfortunately, it was never confirmed if it was due to speed or mechanical failure, but when he hit this corner, he was thrown from his car and passed away from head and neck injuries.
At his home race?
At his home race in practice at the age of 20.
That's horrible.
So, Mexico went into mourning, and the motor world lost a young star. There were a lot of quotes about how just, like, excited, how well he got along with a lot of the drivers.
Yeah, it was only his second season, too.
And, you know, the other sad thing was there was a lot, apparently he was just, like, a risky driver. A lot of other drivers commented on, you know, whether he would continue to be alive because of the way he drove. I saw a quote from Enzo Ferrari's memoirs kind of talking about how, you know, he takes risks, and I don't know if those risks are going to get him killed. The Mexican track was renamed after Ricardo, but then renamed after both Rodríguez brothers when Pedro passed 9 years later. And like I said earlier, there have only been 6 Mexican F1 drivers in history.
Yeah.
So young talent lost really early in his career. And yeah, that corner that he passed away on, that's actually a corner that Senna had problems with back, I think it was in the 70s.
Isn't that where his
Not
car...
70s.
No,
it's way too back. 90s. Oh my god. Yeah, I was like, I just said that in my head and I was like, that does not make sense.
Isn't that where his car flipped or something and he got trapped in his car?
He lit, like it wasn't his like, yeah, but yeah, he flipped pretty badly.
In the Senna documentary, what was it? They were in Japan and they were having a driver's meeting with the president of the FIA, and Senna is like, this is the same thing that happened to me in Mexico. And I remember them having like a whole section of that Mexican Grand Prix.
Yeah, it was it was just known as like a really dangerous corner.
That's probably why they changed the track.
I don't know if that's why. Apparently they put like a baseball stadium or something on top of it. Weird. I don't know.
Weird.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the more we look at these older drivers from the 50s, the 60s, and even into the 70s and 80s sometimes, it's so unfortunate to hear how so many of them passed during their careers in accidents while they were racing. And it seems, like I said in our last Get Ready episode, ever since Senna, things have changed. I mean, that's what they said at the end of the Senna documentary, that regulations. Once he passed, the doctor who he was good friends with, I can't remember what his name was in charge of safety regulations and changing things and making it safer for the drivers.
But think about that. Senna died in, the 90s?
Yeah.
And, this is 62?
Yeah.
And it's just... I'm just curious the mortality rate, the statistics. Like, if there is data out there, there is, obviously, but, if someone's put it all into a graph and to just see, it's so different.
Well, and I wonder, because, our parents always talk about how, your everyday car in the 60s didn't have seatbelts. I wonder...
I feel like that's a joke they make.
I know, I think that maybe it was a joke. Who knows?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
I don't know. I wonder if these cars had seatbelts. Probably not.
They don't have airbags.
Obviously.
They don't have, the other thing, too, is when you look at these cars, they
look so different.
They're so drastically different.
Yeah.
And the speed at which they're going, it's just, I feel like the reliability was just such a different sport.
Yeah.
The evolution of F1, I feel like I've seen it. If you were to throw Ricardo into a 2023, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know. It's so technologically now. And it's such a different, the car as a whole
is so different.
Is so drastically different.
Yeah. So,
yeah. So, it shocked the world.
Makes sense.
It's the first driver I've done research on. I'm sure I probably haven't looked
most of the drivers,
but the New York Times had, this made the New York Times, his passing.
And I'm guessing because he was so young. Any driver's death is going to be tragic, and there's going to be articles from back then about it. But because, it was only his second season, he was 20 years old, it just makes it even worse.
Yeah. And again, this is that time where Ferrari was just...
They were struggling.
It was riddled with death.
Yeah.
So, Ricardo Rodríguez, big name. You'll see the Rodríguez name, obviously, for the Mexican GP. It's the name of the circuit. So, the more you know.
And next year, when we come back around to the Mexican Grand Prix, we'll likely focus on his brother.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, that's Ricardo.
Awesome. Shop talk time. Nope. Part of the week time. I'm sorry.
Pods.
It's been
You forgot about the pods.
I know. Part of the week time. Side pods. What are they? What do they do? How do they work? All that good stuff. So side pods are basically the side of the car. Some teams, their side pods look significantly different than others. So some teams you'll notice, I think Ferrari's car from last year or even this year, you'll notice the side of the car is way more, it's way wider and even angular compared to Mercedes' car last year. The side pods are basically just essentially, like I said, the side of the car, but the point of it is a bit more of an aerodynamic and cooling focus. So as the car moves at a high speed, the air is displaced by the front wheels, even though air from the front wing is going more over the wheels of the front. It can still create some turbulent air behind the car, so the side pods are designed to direct the airflow into and around the tires into the car's diffusers in the back. And so that is like one of the big portions of it, and the reasons why so many teams have different variations of their side pods. They're trying to figure out which is the most aerodynamic portion of it. How are they able to optimize the aerodynamics of it as well as the cooling aspect of it? So, like I said, they do play a crucial role in cooling the cars. Their engine, the transmission, and the brakes. So side pods are equipped with radiators, oil coolers, and brake ducts that help to dissipate the heat and keep the car at an optimal temperature. So I even believe you'll notice how on some of the cars they have like, it's almost like, it looks like gills on the side of the car.
Yeah.
I believe that's also technically part of the side pod, and it's supposed to bring like cooler air into the car, but also release some of the heat from the car, because the car can get so hot inside, like we saw in Qatar and some of the other races. The drivers will even comment on how hot it can be. So one of the different styles of a side pod is called the Coke bottle side pod. So you'll notice that the like body of like a Mexican Coke bottle is the body shape of the actual car. So like the
Yeah, if you're looking
above, if
it's a bird's eye view.
Yeah, you'll see it can sometimes be similar to the shape of a Mexican Coke bottle, and that's because it's going out so that the air will flow that way around the car, and it's going to go in a bit at the end, but then direct the air out so it's not going to hit the rear tires. And yeah, like I said, the air is going to be directed in a way so that it can cool off the inside of the car and has a lot more to deal with the cooling. And if they didn't change the shape of it, then, I mean, well, again, they're going to figure out different ways. So like Ferraris, with it being a bit more angular, it might direct the air in a specific section because their car might need to be cooled off in that specific spot, where like Mercedes car, like their brake system might need to be cooled off more than like their engine or something. Yeah. So every car is going to look very different because of that. And there are some teams that are even trying to make it so that they don't even have to have side pods. So yeah, really, it's a short explanation because
it's the side of the car.
Yeah, it's really just the side shape of the car and the cooling system of it. But it is a very crucial part of the car because without it, it would overheat. There would be way too much turbulent air going to the rear tires, and the air wouldn't then. Without the side pods, the air would not be directed to the rear wing.
I think what's like blowing my mind the more we learn about the physical aspects, like the physical parts of the car, is, and obviously this is like a no shit Sherlock comment that I'm about to make, but the amount of parts that it almost seems like almost every single part, aerodynamic and cooling is such a focus on every single aspect.
Yeah.
That every part of the car is working differently for each team to cool off or to aerodynamic, like to cut through air.
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously that's the whole point of the car, but I think it's the fact that it's so embedded in everything.
Yeah. That like the front wing, the way that the air hits the front wing and is directed behind the front wing, then affects the shape of how the side pods should be made, and then the shape of the side pod is going to affect the rear wing. That like all of it has a different part in the aerodynamics of the car, and without optimizing one of those, then it's going to throw off everything else.
Well, and I think learning about the physical parts of the car also just, like, shows you the amount of thought and science that goes behind. Like, it's just such a, like, it gives you such a greater appreciation for the engineering in the factories.
Yeah.
And, like...
It makes sense why so many of the teams have wind tunnels so that they can see how the air is going to hit the car.
I don't know. I just think, like, it's such a cool focus... Because you're like, holy crap, this team of people are... Like,
geniuses.
They're geniuses.
Yeah.
As someone who was never a science person, who was never that great at math, you know, English major here, the scope of what the thought that has to go into it. And obviously it's, like, no shit. I know that. But
yeah, but it's still at the same time, there's a lot involved in it. And so I think, I wouldn't have thought that deeply into it. Honestly, for a long time, I just thought the side pod shape had to deal with, like, the placement of certain interior pieces of the car.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't understand why some of them were shaped the way that they were. But it makes sense that, like, each team's going to have a different shape based on what they need to optimize.
Yeah.
So, or, like, what they need to cool down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Next, I'm going to go into the
Blue flag.
What are blue flags? What's the purpose?
Is it like a pretty blue? Like a sky blue?
I'd say so. Well,
like a...
I think it's like a light blue, but then I also don't know if it's different in every...
Like, is there like a blue flag blue? Like, is there standardized?
I don't know. I didn't look into that one. I'm kind of mad. I should have looked into that. The specific...
Blue,
like the, what is it? Like the H number? The hex number? Is that what it's called?
I don't know. Like the Pantone.
Yeah. Is that what it is? I don't
know.
know. Anyways, blue flags. I don't think I've actually ever noticed a blue flag, ever.
I've never heard anyone speak about blue flags.
They're very relevant. The fact that we've never noticed it is really bad.
But, in our defense, like, I don't know, I feel like we just hear about, like, yellow flags and...
Yellow flags, red flags.
Green flags.
A green flag and a checker flag.
Like,
and, like, maybe, like, a double yellow.
I also think,
Oh, and a black flag.
But I also feel like the majority of the conversation is probably not going to be yellow flags. Like, when we're watching. Like,
yeah, but now this is something that we can notice because it's actually important for certain things.
All right. So what's a blue flag?
The purpose of the blue flag, it is normally waved to inform a driver that they are about to be overtaken, but that's the overall purpose, but it serves different aspects of that throughout the weekend and depending on what kind of session it is. So if it's a practice, if it's a qualifying, if it's an actual race, it has sort of different purposes within that. So at all times, it is shown to inform a driver leaving the pit that traffic is approaching. So say someone is leaving the pit and there's like 2 cars or something coming up and they're like gonna come into each other. Mm-hmm. They're gonna meet. You're gonna see a blue flag being shown to the driver leaving the pit so that they know, hey, there's a car like right there. Which we've seen many times that happen where a car is coming out and there's a bunch of other cars coming. And we've never noticed the blue flag, but now it makes sense.
Look out for those blue flags, folks.
Actually, though, during practice, it is shown to inform a driver that a faster car is close behind and is about to overtake. So typically you'll see this towards the end of practice where some drivers might still be doing some fast laps to get some testing done, but also you're going to see some drivers going really slow just to like make it back to the pit. So you'll see that a lot.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Yeah.
In that instance, how is it shown to the driver? Like, is it told to them? Like, hey, or are there people just, like, there's enough people on the sidelines?
I think there's a lot of people on the side of the track with flags, like, a lot more than we realize.
Okay.
Yeah. And then during the race, it is shown to a driver who is about to be lapped. When shown, the driver concerned must allow the following car to pass at the earliest opportunity, and if 3 warnings are ignored, they will be penalized. So I think we saw this with Yuki was the car that was being shown the blue flag. I don't remember what Grand Prix it was at, but I think Lando was trying to pass him or something.
Oh my god, I think I remember what you're talking about because of the radio talk.
Like, Lando just kept being like, why isn't this guy letting me through?
Why is he defending? Yeah.
And so you're actually shown, when you're the car being lapped, you're shown a blue flag on the racetrack so that you know you're about to be lapped. Like, you need to let the car pass you. You cannot defend.
I'm not sure if there's another flag that is for this, but it almost seems like it's like a yield. Like, you need to yield.
Yeah. Like, you need to let the car pass you, and if you don't do it within the 3 flags you're shown, then you will get a penalty. I also think we probably have seen this before. Like, if you're about to get overtaken, I think you're going to be shown this during the race, and so we might have seen this in, like, some crash onboard videos where, like, it's an accidental turn-in because the car behind that's trying to pass turns in thinking that the car is going to yield because they're supposed to. Because eventually, once you start the overtake, whoever's front wheel, it depends on where the front wheel, like the wheels are positioned, but I think we probably have seen this before, and we just haven't noticed.
We'll have to start paying more attention.
Yeah.
First time we see it will be an eventful moment.
It will be.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of, so F1 has a really great page on all of the, like, beginner guide to flags.
Yeah, they have a lot of, for, like, anyone like us getting newly into it, they have a lot of really good beginner guides all on their website, like, because there are so many rules and just flags and things to know.
I feel like flags are one of those things where you don't really go to look them up because the flags that you don't see as obviously are not ones that you're going to look up all the time or, like, question what's going on. Because, like, if I saw a blue flag, I'd be like, okay, it's not a yellow flag, it's not a red.
I mean, we clearly haven't noticed it.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, like, clearly have not noticed this blue flag.
But, yeah, no, they have some really great info on there where it explains the majority of the flags, I'm pretty sure. And sometimes you'll even notice where it won't just be, like, a single yellow, but it'll be 2 yellow flags being waved. So there's all that info on F1's site, and I think for the next couple episodes, we're going to be going over 1 flag or maybe 2, depending on if it's like the green flag, that takes about 2 seconds to explain, so we'll probably do 2 flags that episode. But it's definitely important to know what they are, because some of them you might never see, like the black flag, the last time it was shown was a long time ago, I think. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the more we know.
Exactly. But that pretty much wraps up this episode. It's a little bit of a shorter one, but I think I'm excited for the Mexican Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting from everything, because we have never watched the Mexican Grand Prix before. From everything I've seen, apparently it's a great event. The fans come out in full force. So it'll be interesting. I think that it'll be interesting to see how this one goes.
There is one rumor going around about the Mexican Grand Prix.
As of October 15th, because, again, this is pre-filmed, the rumor that we have heard is
that Checo will announce his retirement at the Mexican Grand Prix, with it being his home race. But then also that same day, the rumor that if Checo does not end up second in the driver's standings at the end of the season, then Daniel Ricciardo will be replacing him for next season. We don't know what's true. We don't know what's going to happen. But between the time of us filming and the time of us actually coming out with this episode, the rumors may be clarified. They may not. By the time we get to the Grand Prix, the Mexican Grand Prix, we might find out what's going on. All in all, if the rumors are true, as much as, like, we've had issues with Checo and his driving with, like, crashing into other people, you never want to see someone's career end in the way that Red Bull is pushing him out.
Yeah, that's the one thing that was a little interesting about yesterday that I saw online, because Red Bull is pushing this, Road to America, the show run, and Danny Rick was in a Red Bull car in full Red Bull livery, and it was a Red Bull event. There was nothing for AlphaTauri.
He was even in a Red Bull race suit.
Yeah, it was,
It was odd.
It was just a little strange, especially since we had just heard about the P2 Checo rumor.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, like we've said in past episodes, when wins don't come, I think certain relationships rub weird. And
knowing the history of Red Bull, I mean, this season alone, they dropped Nick DeVries after a couple of, 9 races, I think it was. So I think when you sign as a driver to Red Bull, you never know what's going to happen.
And hey, it might not be the end of his career. If these come to fruition, who knows? We'll see what happens. But
exactly.
Oh my god, I have to sneeze.
Oh, do not sneeze on camera. That's
gross. I'm not.
Anyways, we will end it. We will end it here, guys, so MC can go sneeze. Bye, guys.